Hi, I'm Cyndi Lee.
And I'm Hunt Parr.
And this is Om Yoga Today. And today, we're going to be talking all about imposter syndrome. But before we do that, I just want to remind you to like and subscribe below. So imposter syndrome, or I feel like a fake. Hunt and I have been talking about this for a while, and we both sort of have touches of this in and out of our lives and our careers. And then we realized, right, that a lot of people we know have this, and it's kind of a thing with teachers.
It's a very shared experience for anyone teaching.
Yeah. So you really looked up and learned about the definition of this.
So we have a definition of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome can be defined as a collection of feelings of inadequacy that persist despite evident success. And I think that ties in a lot to the conversations we have about doubt, right? Doubting what we know, because a lot of us have to kind of build the airplane of teaching and learn how to fly it at the same time. So we wonder if we actually know what we're talking about.
Yeah. We wonder, chronic self-doubt. And, so I had an amazing opportunity several years ago to meet Louise Hay. So if you don't know who Louise Hay is, she was a woman who really started what we could call the affirmation movement. And you might see products like Hay House books and Hay House various products. And they came from Louise Hay, who back in the day in San Francisco, when the AIDS crisis was really beginning and starting to be devastating to the gay community, she stepped into that community in San Francisco, and she said to them, "You are worthy, you are good, you are loved, and you can love yourself." And she became loved by them and was so very helpful to them. And this practice of affirmation really spread all over the world. So I got to meet her one day, and I was talking to her about things like my own imposter syndrome. Right. And she said, yeah, every teacher thinks they're a fraud. And that kind of blew my mind, because you think, oh, I'm the only one that thinks that, and everybody else doesn't think that. But that's pretty natural in a way.
Right.
So the other thing she did that was so amazing and wonderful was she gave me what we would call a path. So when you recognize that you feel that way, what can you do? And she said, all you can do is teach what you know. All you can do is teach what's meaningful to you. You can't teach what you don't know. You can't teach what you think other people want. That's not going to make you less of a fraud. You have to drop into what you know, what is meaningful to you, and teach that. And the people that need that, and there are people that need that, so that's where trust comes in, they'll show up.
They'll show up for you.
They'll show up for you. They'll show up for them, and you show up for them.
And there's something that you said that I really love, which is sometimes doubt can be quite good for your practice. Like that can actually point you to a space of reflecting on your choices as a teacher and create growth. So I love looking at teaching as its own practice. Sometimes we walk in expecting perfection of ourselves. When we show up, have the offering, do the best that we can, and that's what we had for that day.
Yeah, and I think that it also means, that you still have to do your preparation, and you still have to learn things.
Right.
It's not like, whatever, I'm doubting, I'm going to just ignore that and do whatever. You can support yourself. And I think you have some ideas around that too.
So I was looking at a couple different practices, and they tie into a lot of a Buddhist practice called loving kindness, or metta or Maitri. Mostly just bathing yourself in compassion and sharing that with others. So one of them that I thought was recognize when these feelings emerge, right? When you're teaching and sitting with, do I know what I'm talking about? Does anybody want to listen to what I have to offer? Right. Recognizing that moment. And that is called getting familiar, right? Which in Tibetan is gom, G-O-M, and that's the word they use for meditation.
And that's the word for practice.
The word for practice.
Practice is about getting familiar. So taking this quality of doubt and making friends with it, recognizing it, and relating to it into a practice rather than, trying to hide from yourself.
Hide behind it.
Yeah.
rewrite or drop the narrative around these feelings. And I love that instruction, especially drop the narrative, because that's a big part of my contemplative practice or my meditation work is you're sitting and then a thought comes up and then we instantly create a huge story around it, right? Or we hear a sound and our mind turns it into 10 years from tomorrow.
Right.
So all of a sudden something that could be, oh, my shoulder hurts, or oh, it's a random sound, turns into something that's all consuming and really wants to draw you in, or
Right.
it's a sound, or my shoulder hurts.
Right.
So dropping the narrative and just recognizing when you feel doubt and working with it.
So recognizing that narrative about doubt as something impermanent, and recognizing even the doubt as something that can come and go, but isn't a definitive description of you.
Right.
In ever.
Yeah.
Really.
It's just moving like everything else.
Something that's happening in that moment.
Just happening.
No biggie.
No biggie. No biggie. I think that's a loving kindness instruction,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
The next one, be kind to yourself or practice compassion. A lot of teachers, especially newer teachers, sometimes don't recognize that they do know a lot. There is a reservoir there. There is something to pull from, but they haven't built trust in themselves yet. So being kind to yourself. When you walk in, you're there, this practice that we're trying to offer, a yoga class or a meditation class, like we're trying to create an environment of compassion so that students can show up and learn and grow, but also practicing that towards ourselves because teaching can be very isolating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, well, Mr. Iyengar said, yoga is an ocean. So generally, ordinary yoga teachers like us, we don't know the whole ocean. We can't teach the whole ocean. But we have a particular interest in one part or another, and that's what we can teach. But even evolving that takes patience and takes time. And so that idea of being kind to yourself. And also it reminds me of when I was a dancer. And I remember I was in a performance once with a friend of mine. We did a duet. And I thought it went really well. I was really excited. It was great fun. And as soon as we came off stage, she was so mad and she was swearing. She was like, that's the worst performance we ever did. And she just thought it was a terrible show. And I was like, dude, that's your experience. But that's not the audience's experience necessarily. And, it's the same thing. Like, you can't always make yourself happy, and you can't make everybody else happy. So you just have to keep showing up with that kind heart, and this is my genuine offering today.
And I love that because especially when we practice loving kindness, I know there was a story you tell about learning to practice it for yourself. That was very eye-opening, but we're often the hardest on ourselves, right?
Totally.
Like that was a terrible class, that wasn't a good offering, and everyone else blissed out or whatever.
Yeah,
so
the students are like, that was the best class I've ever had.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So making
Letting
sure
go.
that you're including yourself in compassion practice.
Yeah, and giving away the practice. We're always giving away the practice. That's, people gave it to us, and we give it, it keeps it alive.
The last one I came up with was visualize a successful outcome. So we could call that a contemplative or a imagery-based meditation, but thinking about walking into this space, especially if you're a new teacher, and what kind of outcome, what kind of things you'd like to feel or notice, and then also maybe practicing not being attached to what comes up.
Yeah. That's a very Buddhist notion too.
Yeah.
Not being attached to the fruits of your action. Which means that as a teacher, it's about generosity. I had a friend who said juggling is all about generosity. Because as soon as you catch something, you let it go, right? You're just letting go. And teaching in a way is like juggling because you've got your own, internal monologue, issues, hopes and fears. And then you've got a whole bunch of people there and you don't really know what's going on inside people. And then I feel like a little bit of a responsibility to my teachers and my lineage and to really show up and be present. And, we have to let go of all of that.
Right.
And I think the more you let go of it and yet prepare, that's basically the equation.
I love
there.
the image too of your teachers sitting on your shoulder. And especially if I'm nervous about something, I taught a really big class. There was like 200 people during a wellness week in New York. And I took a moment and I actually visualized my teacher sitting on my shoulder and the whole path back. And it felt all of a sudden very connected in, right? Or that I was in relationship, which is one definition of yoga, with all of these people that came before me. And I was just one face of that diamond, if you would. And then it felt much clearer and easy to share.
And you feel support.
Yeah, you feel supported.
From the lineage.
Support from the lineage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing we want to talk about in this show a little bit more is the topic of lineage and our relationship as I'm one of your main teachers and how he's evolved what I've taught. And so this is a really important topic to us, what we've learned from our teachers, how we're keeping the practice alive, and how we're sharing it.
And how it changes.
And how it changes, as it should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are really good topics. I just want to touch on one thing. You were saying the last thing about visualizing the outcome that you want, or the experience. Maybe if we don't want to get hooked on an outcome. The experience that you'd like to share and that you'd like to have. And if you don't know how to do that, just briefly, this is called a contemplative meditation. So you can think about what you'd like to have happen, and you really visualize it. Visualize yourself in the space, the students, the feeling, what feeling you might have. And when your mind strays, as it will with any kind of meditation, it's fine. You just come back and keep building that visualization. This is actually a very traditional Tibetan Buddhist way of meditating, is visualizing very specifically and very precisely. And so you can try it. It's a really amazing practice. So I have a practice to share.
All right, let's do it.
And we're going to do it together. Maybe you have something to write on and with. And we're going to do a little exercise because one way to stop thinking that I don't know anything or I don't know enough is to actually explore, what do I know? So this assignment is to write down 3 things you know and 3 things you don't know. Okay?
Okay.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Okay. And, not to be belabored, you just kind of go 1, 2, 3. And the things that you don't know might be things that you would like to learn.
Okay.
Ready?
I think I'm there.
One thing you know.
One thing, I know how to show up.
I know how to show up. What does that mean, show up?
I know how to show up. I know how to kind of gather together wherever I'm at that day, take a moment. In my specific tradition, we sometimes call it raising lungta, or just gathering your personal energy together, and then walking into a space and giving the best offering that I can, and then not being too attached to the outcome. And really trusting that that was the best that I could do at that moment. And then maybe next time making a different decision, learning, right, the process of teaching as a conversation. Oh, that didn't work so well. I'll try something slightly different next time.
Right.
Or, I learn as much from my students every day as I think they do from me. So this conversation can only happen if you show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think I know that similar. I know how to teach yoga as a conversation. I think I also know how to teach yoga pretty good. But that's what makes it pretty good, is that you are paying attention. It's a conversation, but the teacher is the only one who's using words. But if I say something, I wait to see how it lands. And then I know where to go. I think I'm a better listener in yoga class than maybe in real life. So that could be my first, I don't know. I don't know how to listen in real life as well as I do teaching yoga. But I can practice that.
What were you saying?
So what's one that you don't know?
So this is kind of broad, but I wrote, I don't know what I don't know. And what I mean by that is
Very meta.
all the time I walk into a learning environment and I had no idea about the body of knowledge that was being presented that I didn't know about. Whether it's subtle anatomy or actual anatomy, whether it's some point in philosophy, but like it's like every time, right, you're just getting a tiny little drip of something so vast. And I'm constantly reminded that we're just seeing a little bit of the iceberg, right? There's so much more underneath the water.
And what Rinpoche said, my teacher, who, what he taught us was that in that lineage, Tibetan Buddhist lineage, the teacher is sitting on your head. So he's sitting on my head and his, wisdom is coming out. And he said, drip, 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 the bucket fills.
Right.
So if we know a little drip of something, we just keep showing up, listening, paying attention, and hoping for the best, having a positive.
And I just got an email from a private client that said, I kicked up into handstand the first time, drip, drip, drip. So that just passed right down from him to you to me.
To that client.
To that client.
Right, so people are dripping all over the place.
We're dripping all over.
Perfect. I think that's a good place to end our show for today. And we're so happy that you guys are here with us. We are really making this as an offering for all yogis and all yoga teachers ever, and hoping that it will be of interest and of benefit. So we'd like to end each one of our episodes with a practice that's called the Brahma Vihara, but we also call it the dedication of merit. So whatever merit we might have accrued or you might have experienced, we can dedicate this to all beings everywhere. So if you keep watching, you'll learn it and you can say it with us. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings never be parted from freedom's true joy. May all beings dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Cyndi.
Thank you. Yay.